All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close-Up. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, a part of the Orlando Magic HQ network. Today's a fun one. We got Bryce Simons, a part of the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini. He's also got the Pistons Pulse podcast that he is a host on, and he's just a great basketball mind. He's got a Substack that he produces a lot of content on about the draft this past summer. And then obviously a lot of Pistons Pistons related topics because he is a Pistons guy. But Sam is awesome and he really likes the Orlando Magic and we just have a great conversation. This first part is all about kind of the Orlando Magic and the Detroit Pistons and how they fit into the landscape of the Eastern Conference of the NBA. They're both two teams on the rise. Both of them were playoff teams last year. Obviously the Magic have made the playoffs twice now. Kind of feel like they're a little bit of a step ahead of the Pistons, but the Pistons are coming. They're a fun team, a lot of young players. Cade Cunningham is a beast, and it's just a really good conversation. We talk about things we like about each teams, the questions we still have about the teams, and their young prospects and how they've just been building through this rebuilding phase. It's really, really fun. Then we do a little bit of a deep dive on the younger Magic players, included the most recent drafted players, Jace Richardson and Noah Penda, who are the Magic's most recent draft picks at pick 25 in the first round and pick 32. Magic actually traded up for Noah Penda in the second round. And these are players that Bryce really was high on and is really psyched that landed in the Magic. And he kind of gives us a nice little breakdown about them and how he thinks they can fit with your Orlando Magic. So really, really, really good episode, and we're psyched about it. Before we get to that conversation with Bryce, I just want to remind you all that Orlando Magic HQ is your home for all Orlando Magic news. We got weekly podcasts. Our social media is super active, constantly giving you all the latest news and happenings around the Orlando Magic. So check us out on Twitter, Instagram, whatever your favorite social media platform is. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. We could really use you all to subscribe. We know a ton of you watch this without actually being subscribed. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and give us a like. That helps us a lot. If you're listening to this in audio, go ahead and just, give us a 5-star rating and review. We would really appreciate that. It helps us a lot in the algorithms in the search so it can get our content to more people. Second thing is check out our Patreon program. We have a really fun Patreon program that we're proud of. And, there's a lot of really cool benefits that are going to benefit you, the fans that support us, and your support directly helps us maintain what we do and helps us pay the bills because, we're trying to make this happen. We're trying to do bigger and better things. The more subscribers we get, the more we can do those things. Speaking of paying the bills, let's pay the bills. We are super psyched to be launching off this new partnership with the Believe Podcast Network and FanDuel. FanDuel is such an awesome sports betting platform. If you're anything like me, you love a good little sports bet, particularly when the Magic start playing. But right now, before we get to the Magic, it's the football season. And there's tons of really cool things you can do. From live bets, prop bets, future bets, you can kind of do it all. Week one, there's such fun stuff like a fun parlay idea, okay? Here's a spicy one for Sunday. Commanders to cover the 6.5 spread. Combine it with a game going over 47.5 total points. Throw in Terry McLaurin to score a touchdown. The NFC East rivalry always gets wild. McLaurin has been Daniel's security blanket all year. That's a fun one that I would be psyched on. I was doing a lot of fantasy football research today, and I had a lot of thought going on to the Commanders with Daniels and stuff like that. And I really kind of like this prop bet that you can go do right now on FanDuel. So shout out to FanDuel. Check them out. We're super excited to be partnering with them. And we couldn't be happier to have them a part of our show. All right, let's dive right into this episode with Bryce. All right, everyone. Like I said, we got Bryce Simons, Motor City Hoops Game Theory Podcast, basketball extraordinaire. Bryce, welcome to the show. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to having this conversation with you today. How are you doing?
Good, Steven. Peek behind the curtain before your listeners. We tried the intro a couple different times, and the one that went through was when you finally said basketball extraordinaire. So
Yeah.
I think that was the ticket there. No, I'm joking. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk some Orlando Magic basketball, some NBA draft, something I love to really do. I don't know if we'll talk a little bit of Pistons and where they're at in relation to the Orlando Magic. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been listening to your content for a while. Your stuff and your Substack going through the draft is what kept me in tune with kind of what I should be thinking. Cause honestly, like, I didn't do a ton of draft prep this year. I was just in a phase of my life, like moving and stuff where I'm like, I just can't really focus on the draft and like figure out who I want the Magic to take. So I was relying on a lot of, on the Game Theory show and Substacks and a couple other outlets that cover the draft. So thank you. And then you and I started chatting a few weeks ago, and I'm glad we're getting to connect on a show. Before we get to kind of like the Magic draft stuff, Bryce, I want to talk a little bit just generally about our teams. You're a Pistons guy, I'm a Magic guy. They're both kind of in a similar phase right now. The Pistons took a massive jump last year. They went from a team that only won a handful, I think it was like 14, 15 games, to winning like 44 games last year, which is just incredible. Getting coach of the year again with a brand new coach and JB Bickerstaff. Obviously just like having that healthy year, showing up, being the Cade that we all thought he could be, like a superstar, and then you got the Magic making the playoffs second year in a row, some injuries there. But again, these two young teams with a lot of talent kind of starting to shape and potentially be these next forces in the Eastern Conference. When you are like thinking about the Magic and the Pacers, and just the landscape of the East, obviously things are weird right now with the East. Like, Dame is back on the West Coast, injuries. The Bucks are kind of a mystery team. The team that just went to the finals, their best player just is going to be out for the season, and their center went to a rival team. There's, the Celtics just blew it up, not blew it up, but like they're taking a year off, like moving major pieces. So retool, whatever the GM wants to call it. How do you see the Magic and the Pistons kind of sitting in the landscape of the East right now?
Yeah, it's really fun to look. I mean, both conferences. This is why we do this, right? Like every year I feel like, oh, this is fun, or this is interesting, or this draft is going to be this or this. It's every year. Like every year it's something different. That's why we love sports. And listen, the Western Conference is what it is. I still am fascinated by the Eastern Conference. So like to completely just give up all of the information here at the top. We recently did this over on the Pistons Pulse podcast, my Pistons specific podcast. If anybody wants to listen to that preview, we'll have a Western Conference one in a couple weeks. But I have the Knicks and Cavs kind of in the top tier. Like I just do. I have Magic number 3, Steven. Like I have them in my next tier. I have them as the third team in the East. I love the Desmond Bane trade. I know we'll talk about that a little bit more in terms of what Desmond Bane will be for the Orlando Magic. I'm sure we'll talk about what they gave up and was it, all of that. I really like this roster. I have loved Paolo Banchero since that draft. I wasn't doing this fully in that draft in terms of NBA draft stuff, but he would have been my number 1 guy on the big board in that draft. Like I just am like, this is what teams are looking for. This is a jumbo, can play the offense through him. He can pass. He's big. If he really shoots it, like, you guys all know who Paolo is. So I love him. Franz, obviously, outside of the 3-point shooting, which is a question and a fair question, but is
very fair,
incredible otherwise. And then what I like is you look at their cap sheet. They have those 4 guys locked in, right? Like Suggs and Bane to go with those 2 guys. So that's locked in. But I kind of like the young talent on this roster as well. So what I have said is, I think Orlando is 1 year ahead of the Detroit Pistons. Listen, I'm biased. I think Cade Cunningham is the best player between the 2 teams. I think he's incredible. Paolo's not too far behind. But when you look at Orlando having Franz and Suggs and Desmond Bane now, Detroit can't keep up with that yet. And this is the year they find out, is Jaden Ivey one of those guys? Is Asar Thompson one of those guys? Where is Jalen Duren? And if they are, then you go make your Desmond Bane trade.
Sure.
Right? So I think Detroit is a year behind Orlando in regards to where they're at in their rebuild. We called it restoration here whenever it was Troy Weaver at the helm. But yeah, I think Orlando's a year ahead.
And that makes a lot of sense. Like last year you all went out and got veterans like Tobias Harris to kind of be a stabilizing factor for that locker room. And and just the presence. The Magic did that a couple years ago with bringing in someone like Joe Ingles. Granted, one was a starter, one was a bench player for us. Different levels of playing with, one being in their prime, one on his way out of the year, but like the same concept, right? Getting some guys that have had a lot of playoff experience to kind of help shape and mold these younger players, bring some stability.
Can I compare it to the KCP one?
Even the KCP, yeah.
Because like that's what I compare it to. I know KCP didn't necessarily work out maybe the way Magic fans wanted.
Sure.
I don't know. Like it seemed like he had a down year shooting the basketball, but like
I was high on KCP, still kind of am. He just had a bad year.
Yeah, I was as well. I thought that was a home run signing. I thought it was exactly what they needed. So what Orlando was thinking with KCP, I think is what Detroit, they had to add more.
Yeah,
but what they thought with Tobias and Malik and Tim Hardaway Jr., and essentially they did it again this offseason. And that's where Malik has his stuff, whatever is going on there. Tim Hardaway Jr., we don't need to get into that. And then they just replaced it with Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. And to me, what it is veteran players that allow you to properly evaluate your talent. That's what those guys do. And I feel like that's what Orlando thought they were getting in KCP was, here's a really good defender that fits what we like as an identity on the defensive end. And he's going to shoot the three ball and give us the spacing we need around Paolo, Franz, etc., to figure out what they are offensively or even beyond what we already know.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where the comparison and really lies between the two organizations.
I initially brought it to Joe Ingles just in that mindset of like, before that, they didn't really have a lot of players that had high level playoff experience.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And that's initially why I thought like, cause like Joe Ingles culturally was a shifter for us. He truly did. Like he was that guy every time out, coaching on the side of the bench. He'd have a guy or two while Coach Mosley has the rest of the group, constantly communicating with people. He was also just such a vocal leader. And I do agree with you on many aspects about the value that KCP brought and why they brought him in being a good thing. Granted, offensively, it didn't work out. I think there's probably some other things as to why that didn't work out, because the Magic in general were just the worst shooting team. It's like something's in the water in Orlando. We'll see what happens with Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones, if the water has been fixed or not. But it's been really cool to see Detroit also take those steps. Because I'm a small market enthusiast. I kind of always want to go for teams in the small markets, even if they're in the same conference as the Magic to an extent, right? I can't support Detroit too much longer because they are getting good, but it's like always want to root for the little dogs, in my opinion, where they can't just go sign the high free agents, because they want to be there. They have to overpay. I mean, look at the price that they had to pay for Tobias Harris, that he's not signing that contract anywhere else. Granted, he did used to play for the Pistons. I'm sure there's a lot of love there, but I just look at these two teams and they're fun. They're teams that are easy to root for. There's players that are easy to enjoy, and they're young up and coming teams with the Magic. So Bryce, I want to circle back to kind of where you were tiering the Magic in the East, right? You mentioned you had them at number 3 behind the Cavaliers and the Knicks, which I think is fair. My question is how are you viewing the rest of the East for that ranking? Because there's a lot of people that are kind of jumping to conclusions with throwing the Hawks up in that range too. And I think they did some nice moves, but I also think there's a ton of question marks there. And I think my second follow-up question is to that is how far behind do you think the Pistons are to there? Because I think there's areas where the Pistons could potentially be a top 4 team in the East next year.
Yeah, so you can count me guilty of jumping too high on the Atlanta Hawks. I am one of those guys. So I said I have one team in the East, one team in the West that's going to make me look stupid this year. The Hawks will be the team in the East. The Clippers will be the team in the West. Those are the off seasons. I really liked what those teams did. Listen, part of the Hawks thing is I love Jalen Johnson. I love Dyson Daniels. I love Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So they just added players that I love and I think help you win basketball games. And this is what you alluded to, if Kristaps Porzingis is healthy, that dude is really, really good. And I think is going to, add a dimension to that could be really interesting. So I have them 4. So if I had my tier breaks, Cleveland, New York, tier break, Orlando definitely 3rd above the Hawks, but in a tier with the Hawks. I have the Hawks 4 in a tier. And then I have another tier break after that is led by the Detroit Pistons right now. And part of that is Giannis is the best player in the East, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if I trust the rest of that roster. The Miami Heat roster is like, I don't know. I love Spo, I think is why I even bring them up. The Sixers should be.
I was just thinking, like, we haven't even talked about the Sixers who have Joel Embiid and Paul George.
Steven, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with them. It's like,
does anyone know what to do?
Here's what Philly's going to do to everybody. They're going to make us all look stupid unless you take a very strong stance. You either it's somebody is going to pick them third and they're going to look really smart, or you pick them 12th and just buy into the fact that those guys are going to be hurt all the time. You know what I mean? So Philly is really, really hard for me to make a decision on. I think those are the only teams, like that's my top 8 would be those teams. And so just because of the continuity of Detroit, they do have Cade Cunningham, younger guys growing, year 2 of JB Bickerstaff. I have kept them in the 5-6 range, like just above, the play-in range is where I'm looking at Detroit right now.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm hoping that we see a little bit more of a jump with them, or just like, I don't want to root for Philly. I'm in Orlando. I don't want to root for the Magic. Like, it would be easier for me to get behind a continued like good run with the Pacers' growth. I want to see Thompson continue to take that step. He's such a young, exciting player. Why am I spacing on his name? The guy that Cole Anthony had that accident with.
Oh, Jaden Ivey.
Jaden Ivey, man, like, dude, I was so high on him on the draft, and like he was having such an awesome year. It's unfortunate that we're talking about him in the same way that like he got injured with an Orlando Magic player, unfortunately. But it's just like he was so good last year and having such a good year. I'm excited to kind of see where that comes out. And JB Bickerstaff's just like a good coach, so it'll be interesting. I'm hoping good things for them. Question for you, back to the Magic, because this is a Magic focused podcast. The bench, you are someone who really enjoys talking about, younger players, their development from the scouting, from their, draft prospects into the early years. And the bench has got a couple of players a couple of slots that are being really relied to by younger players. Anthony Black, playing next to Tyus Jones. And then there's a little bit of question marks on kind of like the 3 spot. It's probably going to be, I imagine, Tristan Silva jumping into that. There's also going to be a lot of staggering. Mosley does like to do some good 10-man rotations at times, so there could be some all bench units. There's the, with Mo Wagner being out for a little bit, maybe even just taking a little bit of time to find himself. He could technically be ready for the start of the season. Sounds like his recovery is going very well for that projection, but again, it could take some time. How do you see the younger players in the second unit growing? I mean, do you have faith for them to fill out? Because like Anthony Black, we all know he's a really good defender. He's, struggles to finish at the rim sometimes. He's obviously a very inconsistent shooter and even a low volume shooter from 3. His playmaking, like he has moments where he's running pick and rolls really well. And then there's times where it seems like he's still really overthinking a lot of stuff. Just kind of want to get your gut check on a player like Anthony Black right now and what you think he potentially could develop this year as, a third-year player.
Yeah. So, I mean, whenever I did this for, like I said, the Pistons podcast, not even knowing we were going to do this one or win or whatever, I mentioned earlier the core 4 locked in, the defensive identity. And then I mentioned as a positive for me was the young rotation upside on the roster. You guys made a trade for Desmond Bane, and you still have all of these young guys in a Anthony Black, in a Tristan Silva, and then the 2 draft picks in Jace Richardson and Noah Penda. That's exciting to me whenever I look at the Orlando Magic roster. Now, it's exciting because I like those guys. I was high on them coming into drafts, but then they have to play out, right? Like they have to contribute. I guess my answer for Anthony Black is like, I just think that's a really good role for him. If Anthony Black was trying to like start in the backcourt with Jalen Suggs, I would come on here with a little bit more like, hey, are we fixing the 3-point shooting in the starting lineup? Is this really what we want? But putting him in the second unit with Tyus Jones, yes, sign me up. And you know what I mean? Like Anthony Black is going to destroy second unit perimeter players defensively. And then now he has Tyus to play on or off the ball for him, right? You want to use, I think he's an underrated like cut, maybe not by Magic fans, but I think he's a good cutter and has a good feel as an off the ball player. The shooting is a concern, always has been. But okay, we're going to play the ball in Tyus's hands, or we're going to stagger Franz into the second unit. Anthony Black can cut and move off of those guys, along with doing some stuff with the ball in his hands. So I understand the offense is a question, but I think for a second unit player that it isn't even a guy that you're solely relying on in the backcourt, I think that's a very good role for him. I mean, right? We can make the argument he's the fourth guard on this team behind Suggs, Bane, and Jones. Yes, give me Anthony Black as my fourth guard in the rotation, and I'm happy.
It seems like they're starting to – they tried the point guard experiment with him last year, which I'm not going to say went bad, but it wouldn't say it went amazing either. And it seems like they're – with the addition of Tyus Jones, it's – let's maybe develop you and shape you a little bit more as a secondary playmaker on this team and not the primary of the second unit, where, because you're going to stagger Franz or Paulo with that unit. You're going to have Tyus Jones, who is a really nice on-ball handler, but can also play off-ball as well. So I think there will be plenty of opportunity for him to still be a playmaker with the ball in his hands, but it's almost like maybe they are starting to envision him more of like a bigger guard, smaller wing that can play make in a sense, depending on the situation. Is it, inbound play or, in transition, who's got the ball or whatever. That's starting to
real quick. That transition would scare me if you were talking about him being a starter, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about bringing him off the bench, it's much more palatable. Here's what I would say. I feel pretty good that Anthony Black is going to be able to play 82. I mean, I'm not saying he played, but be an 82 game player. When I say 82 game player, I mean regular season, 16 game player, playoff guy. I could see if the shot doesn't develop and some of that stuff, where playing him in the playoffs could be a little bit of an issue.
That makes sense.
But we'll see that here in year 3. But I agree with you that that could be a really fun role for him, because listen, you guys might have the best cutting team in the NBA. Like when I go back through things, like I think Franz is the best off-ball cutter in the NBA. Probably. I thought Tristan Silva was the best off-ball cutter in that draft. And I was just reading through my notes now on Anthony Black, and another guy, for a guy who a lot of people thought on ball, he has great instincts as an off the ball cutter as well. I just love that aspect of the Orlando Magic team.
I do too. I was a little annoyed at times when Franz got so on-ball heavy, because it took away a lot of his Swiss Army knife off-ball movements, and he is such a good mover off-ball. And I mean, I know we're kind of talking about the second year, but you brought up Franz. I will always take a moment to praise Franz when I can. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And they brought in Joe Prunty as the new offensive coordinator. So I'm hoping we see more off-ball movement, because we do have guys that are good cutters, but at the same point, there were so many times when the Magic's offense just looked so stagnant and there was no ball movement or off-ball movement. It was, maybe you'd find a trailer or the occasional cutter, but it's there's guys that had so much more potential to where you just stop standing around and just watching them ISO. Let's move around and create some more opportunities with cuts and moving off screens to generate some movement there. And I'm hoping with the addition of Prunty that we can get more of that. Also with the addition of having guys like Desmond Bane, who are elite at that kind of stuff. Give me your 2 thoughts on Tristan Silva. Then I want to talk Bane before we get into Noah and Jace.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Tristan Silva, again, big time off the ball cutter. Another guy, comes down, can he make shots? My thing with him defensively, even coming out of the draft, was I didn't love him at the point of attack. He's not like your, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, those type of guys. But I think he's a really good team off the ball defender. So when you look at the roster, again, I feel comfortable if slotting Tristan Silva into that 3-man, the small forward position or whatever, if you have a 2 deep 10-man rotation. So I like that. And listen, if I'm Orlando, I start the season with that. And then if I get into the season and I'm like, you know what? We're real contenders. Our starting lineup is crushing it. Tyus is exactly what we needed. We have this plethora of centers. Can we get Goga Batadze somewhere that he gets more minutes? I know Orlando fans don't want to lose him. I just love Goga.
I'm indifferent.
Yeah. Okay. But then if you need that rotation wing or whatever, because Tristan's just not ready yet in the playoffs, or Anthony's not ready, then you go make that move, right? You make that move there. But to me, I think they're in a position where you let those guys start the season in those roles, or I would. That would be what I would want to see and do if I was Orlando, and see how they're able to progress here in years 2 and 3.
I was pretty happy with his rookie season in general. He showed the high level, the high IQ that it was praised for coming out of Colorado. So he showed the confidence that you would expect with a year 4 player, but he still also had plenty of rookie moments where it's okay, you clearly missed that defensive read or rotation there. Sure. Even though he is a good defender, there was definitely times where, you could tell he was just a rookie. Offensively, they did, every now and then you'd see him run a play, which was cool, but for the most part, they had his role fairly limited. But Coach Mosley was in a press conference earlier this year, and he mentioned Tristan Silva is going to be a big part of our rotation next year. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. And it also kind of justifies sort of the lack of bench unit improvement outside of Tyus, right? They really are just going to rely on guys that they already had that are very young. And I think that's cool because it speaks a lot of trust on those guys. For a year, an offseason that the front office is clearly going in a major way to improve this team. They didn't have trust in those guys to take steps. I don't have a doubt in my mind they would have gone out and looked for the replacement, which is how aggressive they were in free agency, how aggressive they were in trading for Desmond Bane, how aggressive they were even in the draft trading up for Noah Penda, right? So with just that aggressive mindset from a front office that hasn't been aggressive, I just feel like they truly trust these players to take the step that we need them to take to be a solid second unit.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the roster, they kind of have to be, right? Mean, I'm not the biggest Jet Howard guy. And so when you go outside of that, a lot of the other guys that we've mentioned their names, but if you take away the rookies and quote unquote bigs, it's Tristan Silva, Tyus Jones, and Anthony Black. You know what I mean? Those are the guard wings that you have on the roster right now. And so, like you said, it does look like a vote of confidence from the front office to those young players.
We're not going to talk about him, but I still am one of the few that has the smallest amount of real estate on Jet Island. I'm still there a little bit. I'm yes, he's overpriced. If he was making $2 million, not $5 million, be total different conversation, but it's okay. That's a conversation for another day. Let's talk a Desmond Bane for a few moments before we talk about the rookies. That was a big trade. It was one of the earlier trades, earlier moves in the offseason that kind of, shocked a lot of the NBA world. I wouldn't call it a blockbuster, but it was certainly a very, very big trade for a team that hasn't made big moves in a very long time. When you saw that trade go down, Orlando Magic trading 4 second-round first picks, including the one that has the Phoenix rights to it, and a pick swap, and KCP, who you and I both agree we liked that signing at the time, and Cole Anthony. I'm not sure 100% where you view on Cole, but what did you think about that trade initially? Just going from there.
So I love that Orlando identified a player that makes a ton of sense for their team. First and foremost, I think Desmond Bane, he makes a ton of sense. He doesn't have to be the defender that he isn't, because you have Jalen Suggs and you have Franz and you have Anthony Black and all of these guys, right? I'm not saying Desmond Bane's a bad defender. I'm just saying sure. You're not putting him in a situation where it's hey, not only do we need you to score 20 a game, we also need you to guard the other team's best perimeter player. You know what I mean? He's not in that situation. So that's great. I think they identified a really good player. I think they paid a steep price, Steven, just straight up. I think they did. That's a lot of draft capital. I think we've got to a point in the NBA where we can't just compare things 1-to-1, right? Because Mikal Bridges got traded for 5 firsts, but Luka Doncic only got traded for what Luka got, and player value, pick value, not all first round picks are created equal. And at the end of the day, and this isn't an original thought, but the value of something is what somebody will pay for it. Right?
Totally.
And what it takes for you to acquire it. So how I envision this, and I don't have intel or stuff like Sam has, talks to people. I don't talk to people. I watch games and I form opinions. My very outside perspective is Memphis probably wasn't shopping Desmond Bane, or maybe they were. Maybe that's why the price was so high, and we don't know about another mystery team that was out there that had a big offer. I just kind of envision this being Orlando identified a player, good for their NBA scouting department, called Memphis, and Memphis says like, hey, if you want him, this is what it's going to take. And Orlando decided it was worth it. And that was a big price. Are any of us going to care if Orlando ends up in the Eastern Conference Finals this year and in the NBA Finals the next couple of years? I don't know that we will. The other thing is, like we've talked about, they have the young talent. And I know you want to continue to replenish that, right? Like I understand the value of draft picks or be able to trade for rotation players, whatever. But your two best players are young. Your Suggs is awesome also. 3 of your 4 best players, without getting into an argument or somebody or getting Magic fans mad at me. 3 of your 4 best players are extremely young. We just talked about all these other young players. You still drafted 2 guys in the top 32 or whatever in this draft. It's going to be okay that every other year for a few years you don't have a draft pick. I think that's okay as long as he is the missing piece. If he's not, then we'll look back and we'll be like, hey, not only did they way overpay, but he wasn't the player. He wasn't the missing piece. If they're still 29th in 3-point shooting and bottom whatever in offense, it's going to be looked at as a negative deal. Even if it's not Bane's fault, it'll go to
like
Bane.
What happened with KCP.
Correct.
You know, it looked great and then it looked bad.
It will all fall on Desmond Bane. Like if they are top 15 in offense this year, who's going to get the credit? Desmond Bane. If they're still 29th, he's probably going to be the guy that's like, hey, he wasn't what they need. Now, there's some caveats there, like maybe Franz still doesn't shoot it. Maybe Paulo doesn't, whatever.
Injuries,
But in general, that's what it's going to come down to. And that's what's fun about this. I always like to think about the process, right? Because I think the process of the KCP signing was right. The end result wasn't what we thought. I thought the process made sense. I think the process here makes sense, even though I do think it was a large price to make it happen. But here's the thing, Steven, like what would we be talking about if they had made nothing? What if they wouldn't have made a move? How would you feel today if they were essentially running it back with last year's roster? Wouldn't we be screaming at the top of our lungs and predicting them to be the 6th seed in the East? And I think that's a worse situation to be in.
Totally. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I am one of the few Magic fans that even though you're having to move off of what has turned into a negative contract with KCP to an extent, a contract that's not necessarily a bad contract, but not like the Cole Anthony contract, it wasn't like bad. Like no one's going to look at that and be like, oh, that's a bad contract. I mean, like he's getting paid $13 million. It's a team option on the next year, like pretty easy contract to move around. And I still think there was plenty of teams that look at KCP and just see like, that was it just didn't work out.
Sure.
Bring him over here. Maybe he's not peak KCP anymore, but he's probably going to be a lot better than what he was last year, at least offensively. But I do think if it was 3 first rounds and a swap, probably a lot more level.
There you go. Yep.
4 first rounds, but again, what are we talking about here? If it works out, no one's going to care, right? It's like back in the day, the Magic paid a huge price as a free agent for Rashard Lewis. Well, that team went to the finals. It went to the Eastern Conference Finals twice. No one is looking back at it today, caring that the Magic paid a huge price to go sign Rashard Lewis and, make them that next step that they needed to be during the Dwight years. So if this helps the Magic, like you said, get to the second Eastern or the Eastern Conference in the playoffs this year, or the finals even, no one's going to blink an eye. If in 2 or 3 years they have a championship out of it and can beat someone out of the West, then no one's really going to care. And like you mentioned, these 4 players are locked up for a very long time. If for some reason it doesn't work out, you can trade one of those guys for some picks back and probably recover a decent amount because they're all young enough and skilled enough, unless a major injury were to be part of the reason they didn't work out,
And so I will give you this. We talked about the Pistons being 1 year behind. If Detroit had done this deal, I don't think that would have made sense. I don't think we'd be talking about it in the same light because I don't know that whatever salary match, it'd probably have to have been Tobias Harris and something else, whatever the salary match would be, right? Totally. Tobias Harris and Isaiah Stewart or something like those. Whatever, people understand what I'm saying. A couple players and all of the Pistons draft pick. Bane's awesome, but are we sure Detroit's ready to compete at that level?
Right.
Are we sure? Because it's Cade and Bane. Okay, well, but what else? Is Asar ready yet?
Two more question marks on that team that have to be answered.
Orlando has some questions, but it's just that core seems a little bit more ready. Here's another aspect I think is important. Jamal Mosley's in year 5 with Orlando. JB's in year 2. And that was one of the big things I talked about whenever I went through the standings stuff as well. Orlando has gone 22, 34, 47, 41 with injuries even last
insane.
year. Like Detroit went 23, 24, 14, okay, 40 plus. That's great. It's 1 year. You know what I mean? And so I'm just using Detroit as an example because it's easiest for me.
Yeah.
But that's why that's why it's okay with me with Orlando is it's the right time, let alone the landscape of the East, where if I'm Orlando, I'm looking at this going, we can be, the Cavs haven't shown it in the playoffs yet. And the Knicks
They already took them to 7 2 years ago.
Yeah. And the Knicks, have progressed each year, but new coach, like we see new coaches fail all the time. You know what I mean? So why not think that you have a chance to go and make a run? And we see it every year in the playoffs, regular season, injuries, can completely, one injury to one of the big four in Cleveland, one injury to one of those guys in New York. And all of a sudden we're sitting here January 1st saying Orlando's the favorite in the East. You know what I mean? So
totally.
I'm very okay with their process and what they did, even if at the same time I can say, yeah, I would love if it was 3 first-round picks and a swap instead of 4.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, it's 1 extra pick.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Yep.
It's a large package in general. All right. One quick question. What is your biggest question that each team has to answer this season? Like what do you want to know about the Pistons and about the Magic this season?
For Orlando, I want to know, we've talked about, I want to know, this is a cop out. I want to know what the offense is. Like, has the offense been personnel based? Has it been coaching based? Because you're right. Like this team has too many good passers, too many good off ball movers to not like just have a real nice flow and should be enjoyable to watch and create good looks and all of that. So that is my big thing there. And I'll say this, like, I want to see if Franz can shoot the ball. Like, I love Franz. Totally. It was painful sometimes last year. Every time I turned on the film, he was shooting it different, it looked like. And I'm just like, come on, man. Like, can we figure this out in the offseason? So that's my thing with Orlando. With Detroit, I am giving them till the deadline. They still need a little bit more data collection. And not to get into the weeds on this because it's a Magic podcast, but I said this the other day. Their biggest losses weren't the fact that they lost 28 straight games and how many ever games with Monty Williams and all the games before that. The biggest losses was the data collection they missed out on all those years. The Cade Cunningham injury season. Last year, Jaden Ivey's injury season. Asar Thompson's blood clots. 2 years ago being an absolute dumpster fire where there was no growth, no evaluation. You can't take anything from the Monty Williams year because it was a poorly constructed roster and a poorly coached team. And so there's still, even though they made the playoffs, Steven, there's still a lot of data collection. We know who Cade is, who is Jaden Ivey, who is Asar Thompson, who is Ron Holland, who is Jalen Duren. And so I think they need 50 games. We've never seen those guys play together, Steven. Is what's crazy. And so we have, but it's very few minutes.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like, we didn't see him last year. So I got a little fired up there. Last year we saw very, very, because of Asar's blood clots and then J.I.'s broken leg. But I want to see that and collect that data. And then you can make the next decision. They may make their Desmond Bane trade at the deadline, but I did not want them to make it this offseason because I still want to be able to evaluate those guys in a setting that's actually conducive to doing that.
And that's fair. I think, the Magic last season at the deadline, Magic fans were begging them to make a move. And they said, we don't have enough data on our team in the playoffs yet to feel comfortable about sending out assets for players that might not be here in a year or two, right? Which made total sense, especially now when you look at the move that they did make to retain a guy, to trade after a guy they can have on the team for, 4 years. So that makes a lot of sense with Detroit. You said J.I.'s leg injury, and I know you're talking about Jaden Ivey, but immediately thought of Jonathan Isaac. I'm just a little PTSD on my side. Just a little funny mental note there. But yeah, I'll give you my quick question, my quick 2 thoughts on the team, like my question marks. For the Pistons, I really, really like Jaden Ivey. And I loved what he was doing next year. I want to see what him and Thompson look like next to each other, a part of the rotation. Because like you said, there's no questions on Cade. He's a superstar. He's only going to get better, but I just, I want to see where Thompson's offense can get at too going into year 3 as well. Year 3. And I just want to continue to see what Ivy can do because he's such a fun athlete to watch. He's great. For the Magic, like, what's up with the centers? You know, like we have a lot of them. I do think a lot of people are underrating Wendell Carter because he hasn't been great offensively in a few years, in a season or two now. And can he be a good enough offensive player to be that starter for them, or do they need to look to replace him? But if you're going to look to replace him, it's really hard to find a center who can kind of like Wendell Carter can take switches like 1 through 5. It's, like you don't want him guarding point guards all the time, but if he gets switched onto him, like he can handle it for a moment or two before they can recalibrate their defense, which is pretty rare. Like in the playoffs, he was a switching machine against the Celtics, and it made life very hard for the Celtics. So I do think there's challenges in finding that type of defensive center that can play the style that they want while also fixing the offense. So we'll see what happens there. They have a little bit of time to figure it out, which is nice. I'm like someone who likes Goga, but at the same point, if Mo is healthy, he's playing in front of Goga, then you're paying a third string center $8-9 million to sit on the bench. Like, seems like you could probably better allocate those assets elsewhere. So I don't know. I just kind of want to see with this team healthy and hopefully the offense, I'm going to assume it's at least the league average. What's the move for the center? Because I think that's on a lot of Magic fans' minds is let's improve the center rotation. And I just think it's going to be hard to do.
That's interesting because like I always look at it as like, man, that's just like a good center room, with like all of these players. But then you do go like, okay, is the high end ceiling of it enough for Magic fans, So it's interesting that maybe if Magic fans at times want to see it improved or some growth from that room. It's interesting.
Everyone wants like a stretch 5 rim threat
yeah.
in the center position. And that's just not what Wendell Carter is. He's someone that can shoot the 3, but it's like 33%. It's not very great, fairly low volume, like maybe 2 or 3 attempts per game. People basically like they want Vucevic in an offense with Wendell Carter's defense, and that's just like not going to happen. And so I don't know. I'm fine with Wendell Carter. I think there's enough offense around him to where they, especially with the addition of Desmond Bane, where they don't necessarily need him to be a guy that's scoring 15, 20 points, go get you 10 and 12, 10 points, 10 to 12 rebounds a game, and like let that be your thing. And then, in the second unit, Mo Wagner is an offensive machine, but he is, for all the points that he puts on the board, half the time he's giving that up anyways on the defensive end. AI is a really good defensive player, but a very limited player in what he can actually give you on the court. He played just over 1,000 minutes last year, despite playing over 70 games, and then again, if this team's healthy, Goga, who is a solid backup center, gets shifted to the third unit. So like we have depth there. It's just, is it the right depth is the question, So I don't know. I think I'm a little more patient with it, but it's something that I'm going to be looking at pretty closely this year.
Nice.
All right. That wraps up part 1 of my conversation with Bryce Simons of the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini. We have a great time talking together about the Orlando Magic and Detroit Pistons. Part 2, it's all about the young guys in Orlando. We're talking Anthony Black. We're talking Tristan Silva. We're talking Jace Richardson. We're talking Noah Penda. Stay tuned for that. Reminder, check out FanDuel, all right? There's a lot of really fun things you can do there. Right now, if you wanted to go bet on the Orlando Magic to win the NBA Finals, they're plus 1,700. That's pretty good for a team that's expected to take a big jump this year. You just heard Bryce and I talk about how high we are in this Magic team. That's a bet I would really consider doing right now. So head over to FanDuel.com, shout out to Believe Podcast Network, and we'll catch you on the next episode, part 2.